So, in this video, we are going to discuss about the current situation we are into regarding the Iran war and the consequences it might bring if it's not handled the right way. We will also talk about the current state of the economy and how the war could either make it worse if it's not settled amicably. Please like and subscribe to Freedom Front News so you don't miss the next one.
Professor Piers Morgan, welcome back to Uncensored.
Glad to be here, Piers.
Where the hell are we? I can't think of many people better qualified to at least try and explain where we've got to with this Iran war.
We've suffered a devastating defeat. You want to remember we went into the war with four goals. One was regime change. Two was to eliminate Iran's ability to enrich uranium. Number three was to end support for the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And number four was to put an end to the long-range missile program. We failed on all four counts. Furthermore, on February 27th, the Iranians did not control the Strait of Hormuz. They now control the Strait of Hormuz. Furthermore, our basing structure in the region has been destroyed. Our alliance structure in the region is in tatters, and the international economy may go off a cliff at some point in the not too distant future. This is a catastrophic defeat. There's no other way to cover it up. Now, people might say there is a military solution for fixing this problem. There is no military solution. We've tried every strategy in the book: a major air campaign, a blockade, and now this tit-for-tat strategy. All of them have failed, and nobody has an alternative strategy that will pull our chestnuts out of the fire.
I mean, that is my reading. What should President Trump do then?
Well, I think what President Trump should do is try to get an agreement, a new memorandum of understanding as soon as possible. But the problem is it's not in the Iranians' interest to agree to a new memorandum of understanding anytime soon. They should drag this crisis out for a good month or so more, because the more time goes on, the more coercive leverage they have. So I think Trump is going to have a devil of a time getting the Iranians to agree to a deal that's as good as the memorandum of understanding of June 17th. So I think that he's in real trouble.
And you've got, of course, the Israeli position, which, a bit like with Trump's midterm elections coming in the fall, you've got the same in Israel. Netanyahu will know that if it looks like he's failed with this war, that will probably lead to him being booted out of office. So he has his own political imperative, perhaps, you could argue, to keep this thing going. Conversely, Trump, would probably face the opposite issue, where if it's still raging, this war, in September, October, and gas prices are still going through the roof and more American servicemen and women are being killed, that this could be politically very toxic for him and end up costing him the whole of Congress.
Yeah, I think there's no question, Piers, as you say, that Trump wants to put an end to this. He understands he doesn't have a winning strategy. And as you point out, from an Israeli point of view, it makes sense to try to keep the war going. This is the war against Iran. You also want to understand they're heading in different directions with regard to Lebanon, southern Lebanon, Syria, and Gaza. There have been reports on Channel 13 in Israel that the Trump administration has asked the Israelis to leave Gaza, leave southern Lebanon, and leave southern Syria. And of course, this idea is anathema to Netanyahu and to most Israelis. So it appears to me that what you'll see is that the two sides are at loggerheads on two different sets of issues.
It is a mess, and we've also got this added complexity of Ukraine launching a deadly attack on an Iranian vessel it says was trading weapons with Russia. This could potentially drag in Ukraine's European allies into a war they've so far resisted getting involved with in any offensive capability. What do you think is going to happen here?
I think it's possible that the Iranians may strike at some target in Ukraine, but I think the Iranians do not have any interest in getting involved in a war against Ukraine, and I don't think Ukraine has an interest in getting involved in a war with Iran. Ukraine is up to its eyeballs in alligators fighting against the Russians. The last thing they need is a new front. So I think there may be some minor tit for tat, but I don't think this is going to escalate in any meaningful way. I think the escalation that's really scary is what's happening with regard to the Yemenis or the Houthis and the Saudis. And now it looks like Saudi oil is no longer going to come out of the Red Sea. And furthermore, that the Houthis are actually destroying oil refineries inside of Saudi Arabia. This is really potentially bad news.
I mean, it could be absolutely catastrophic, couldn't it? I mean, and we haven't even got around to the potential apocalyptic element of this, which is if they start trading attacks on desalination plants, for example, the consequences for the people in these countries could be absolutely horrendous.
There's no question about that. You want to remember, though, that Iran hardly relies on desalination plants at all. They rely on desalination plants for somewhere between 2 to 3% of their drinking water. It's the Gulf states that are heavily dependent on desalination. This is one of the reasons that President Trump has not gone after infrastructure, civilian infrastructure in Iran. His great fear is that if he starts going after power plants, he goes after bridges, oil facilities, or desalination plants in Iran, that the Iranians will retaliate in kind. And this will basically, and I'm not overstating the case here, it will destroy these countries in the Gulf because they can't survive without desalination plants. And this greatly limits our ability to escalate.
I think there are also economic pressures on these Gulf states which are beginning to really bite, particularly some of the smaller ones. I mean, I've been hearing about Kuwait and Bahrain and these kind of states who don't have the kind of Middle East superpower economies of, say, Saudi Arabia, who might be in real trouble the longer this goes on.
Well, the thing is, if you look at the geography, Piers, Bahrain and Kuwait can only get their oil out through the Gulf and through the Strait of Hormuz. And given that the Strait of Hormuz is closed to them, they're not getting any oil or gas out. Both the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, the UAE, they're getting their oil out. The Emirates have a base, it's called Fujairah, that's on the Sea of Oman, and they're able to get quite a bit of oil. I'd estimate somewhere on the order of 2 million barrels a day out of Fujairah. And of course, the Saudis, up until very recently, have been getting oil out through the Red Sea. So I would estimate that in total, about 7 million barrels of UAE and Saudi oil have been getting out onto world oil markets, but hardly any Kuwaiti or Bahraini oil has been getting out because it's all bottled up inside the Persian Gulf.
We also have this extraordinary situation where Donald Trump announced he was signing a deal with Saudi Arabia, which would potentially allow the kingdom to enrich uranium in future and to avoid the fullest inspection rights of the international watchdog. Now, you have argued before that it's rational that Iran should acquire nuclear weapons for deterrent purposes. Would you use the same argument with Saudi Arabia, given what's been happening?
Absolutely. From Saudi Arabia's point of view, it makes eminently good sense to have nuclear weapons. I think I've told you before that Ehud Barak, the former Israeli prime minister, said that the reason he believes that Iran is pursuing nuclear weapons is because it makes so much sense. But the key, Piers, you always want to remember this, is that what's good for Iran or Saudi Arabia is not necessarily good for the United States. And in this case, it is absolutely not in our interest, not in America's interest or Europe's interest for that matter, to see either Saudi Arabia or Iran have nuclear weapons. So the fact that President Trump has allowed Saudi Arabia to have this significant nuclear enrichment capability is not good for the United States. But I think in this case, Trump felt that he had no alternative, that if he didn't provide the Saudis with some enrichment capability, they'd go on the nuclear market and they'd get that capability from another country, maybe China, maybe Russia, maybe Japan, or maybe Pakistan. Who knows? But Trump, I think, concluded that they were going to get a nuclear enrichment capability, and it would be better from our point of view, both economically and strategically, for us to be in control, and that we would be able to prevent any move by the Saudis to use that nuclear enrichment capability to get a bomb.
I mean, President Trump's made it clear the deal is contingent on the Saudis recognizing Israel and joining effectively the Abraham Accords. Can Saudi Arabia do that politically for its own reasons, given what is going on in the Middle East right now?
No, and that's why the agreement that was signed last Wednesday made no mention of that. And it wasn't part of the negotiating process because the Saudis would have never agreed to that. The Saudis have made it unequivocally clear that they will only agree to an Abraham Accord with Israel if Israel gives the Palestinians a state of their own or makes significant movement in that direction. And if anything, the Israelis are going in the opposite direction. As you and I have discussed on this show before, Israeli behavior in Gaza is, in my opinion, a genocide. And what they're interested in doing is cleansing Gaza. So the idea that they're going to give the Palestinians a state of their own in Gaza, or even in the West Bank, if you look at the pogroms that the Israelis are conducting in the West Bank, that's even more evidence that the Palestinians are not going to get a state. And the Saudis say that as long as that is the case, there'll be no Abraham Accord. So I think that President Trump is whistling in the wind when he thinks that he's going to get the Saudis to agree now, after signing the agreement last Wednesday, to all of a sudden agree to an Abraham Accord.
How does this all end? I mean, take me forward to the end of the year. Where do you think we'll be?
If I had to guess, I think we're going to get another memorandum of understanding. You know, a lot of people talk about a forever war. There are really sort of two big options besides a peace agreement or a memorandum of understanding. One is escalation, and the other is a forever war. We just go on with these tit-for-tat attacks against each other. I don't think that you can have a forever war, because I think the economic consequences rule that out. I think the longer this war goes on, the closer we get to going off the cliff and ending up with a worldwide economic depression. So this war has to be shut down. And one of the incentives to escalate is because people recognize you can't have a forever war and that this has to be shut down. So they say, let's escalate. But as you and I both know well, Piers, there is no escalation option here. If there was an escalation option, we would do it, right? And in fact, if you look at the most significant military campaign that we've waged in this war, it was the 40-day strategic bombing campaign between February 28th and April 8th. And we ended it, and we never started it up again because it was not a campaign, an air campaign that could produce victory. It was just not in the cards. So we have no escalation option here. Some people talk about putting ground forces in. We don't have enough ground troops to invade an island, much less invade the country of Iran. And furthermore, if we invaded Iran, the Iranians would win that conflict. And furthermore, the American people have no interest in a ground war in Iran. So we have no military option here. And what's going to happen, I believe, I'm not 100% certain, but I believe that President Trump will sign another memorandum of understanding, and the terms from our point of view will be worse than the terms of the 17 June memorandum of understanding. But I think this war will come to an end by the end of the year.